question is regarding the definition of short term as well as long term definition of assets. The question is specific with the short term definition of debt instrument as well as listed securities. Okay. Now, before trying to solve this question, okay, why this was in news is that in this year's budget, the government have introduced long-term capital gains tax for listed securities. So for listed securities, long-term capital gains tax was not there. But from 2018-19 onwards, it have been reintroduced. So earlier it was there, but later the government have withdrawn long-term capital gains tax on listed securities. Now from this year budget onwards, we have a long-term capital gains tax on listed securities. Now, because of that only we have set this question. Now, before trying to answer this question, we will have an idea about the definition of short-term and long-term asset class. So, we are given three category of asset class. One is listed equities, other is debt instrument or debt investment, and the third one is real estate. So, for listed equities, the short-term and long-term definition is 1 year. The short-term and long-term definition is 1 year. So, if you are investing, means if you are selling it, if you are selling a listed equity within 1 year, then short-term capital gains tax will be there. So, it will be considered as short-term and you have to pay short-term capital gains tax. But if you are selling after 1 year, it will be considered as long-term and you have to pay long-term capital gains tax. Now, earlier, so the short-term capital gains tax is 15%, but earlier the long-term capital gains tax were nil. But from this year's budget 2018-19 onwards, this long-term capital gains tax have been introduced with 10%. So the long-term capital gains tax on listed securities is 10% without indexation. Without indexation means it will not take into consideration the inflation impact. Okay, so long-term capital gains tax is 10% on listed securities without indexation. So before that, for for almost a decade, there was no long-term capital gains tax on listed security, but this year budget it has reintroduced it. Now, when it comes to the debt investment, if you are investing in debt investment in a stock exchange or anywhere, if you are making an investment in debt instrument, the short term is 3 year period, 3 year or less. If it is more than 3 year only, if you are selling a debt investment after 3 year, debt instrument after 3 year, then it is considered as long term. So in the case of listed equities, it is 1 year. In the case of debt investment, it is 3 year. And regarding the tax, for short term, if you are if you are selling the debt investment within the 3 year, that is under the short term period, then how much income, your income will be added to your income slab, and you have to pay the tax as per your income slab. But if you are selling the debt investment after 3 years, that is long term, then the tax will be 20% with indexation. So in the listed securities case, when the long term capital gains tax was introduced, there were no indexation, but in the case of debt investment, here the tax is more 20%, but in the listed securities case, it is 10% only without indexation. Here it is 20% with indexation. It is the same in the case of, so what is the definition and the tax for the debt investment? It is the same for real estate, so it will be easy for you to remember. So for short term for real estate is 3 year or less, long term is more than 3 year. Short term, if tax for real estate is taxed as per income slab, and if it is more than 3 year, that is long term, then it is 20% of your long term capital gains tax plus with indexation. Now we will try to solve this question. The short term asset in the debt investment is calculated for 3 years or less. Yes, it is debt investment. The short term is 3 year or less. So that's a correct statement. In case of listed securities, the short term tenure is calculated for 1 year or less. listed security short term is 1 year or less. So both the statement are correct. Yeah, answer comes as C, both 1 and 2.